Let's come to the Unit 3. Today we are going to learn about energy and our planet.
Let's start with a warming up activity. Pretend that you are browsing Amazon webpage to buy a t-shirt. Compare the t-shirts below with the price, style, sew quantity, etc. and decide which one you would like to buy.
So, after we have reviewed some types of energy and understand the situation of those types, in this lesson we are going to practice listening for specific information or main ideas and for speaker's conclusion. With the pronunciation, we'll learn how to stress the keywords and how to use intonation to show feelings. Finally, within the speaking, we are going to learn how to give examples to explain ourselves better, how to give advice, making suggestions, and then take turns of speaking. With the first part, let's start with the listening and building of our vocabulary. Now, here are the vocabulary that are related to the topic energy. Listen and read. Notice the word in blue. These words will be helpful to you when you want to talk about energy or environment topics.
Unit 2, Lesson A, Building Vocabulary. A, Meaning from Context. Page 24. The process of global warming.
1. Our demand for fossil fuels, such as oil and natural gas, is growing.
2. This growing need for energy causes us to burn more and more fossil fuels.
3. Burning fossil fuels, such as coal, puts carbon into the air.
4. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, and other gases reduce the amount of heat that goes out into space.
5. When less heat goes out into space, it means that more heat stays in the Earth's atmosphere.
6. When more heat stays in the Earth's atmosphere, the average temperature increases, making it warmer.
7. A significantly higher average temperature leads to climate change and changes to the weather.
8. Climate change can have a negative impact on people's lives. For example, climate change can make it difficult to grow food in some places.
9. People are starting to conserve energy by making changes that cause them to use less fuel. For example, people are buying smaller cars.
10. Smaller cars are more efficient because they use less gas and oil.
Moving on with the listening skills. Today, the skill that we are going to focus on is listen to keywords. In English, whenever they talk or they speak the keywords, the people will usually stress those words. Stressing means they read it louder and higher than any other words. The keywords are usually the content words like nouns, verbs, adjective, or adverbs that give the listener the information. Trong phần này chúng ta sẽ nói đến keywords là những từ mang nội dung của câu. Người nói tiếng Anh thông thường sẽ nhấn vào những cái keywords này, nhấn trọng âm. Hay nói một cách khác là người ta sẽ đọc những cái từ này với giọng to, cao, rõ hơn. Trong giao tiếp thông thường thì người nói thường nhấn trọng âm mạnh nhất vào những từ keyword ở cuối, hoặc là khi họ muốn chỉnh sửa, phản đối lại một thông tin nào đó. These are the examples. Where's Karen going? Where's Karen going? So you can hear the going is spoken out with a louder and higher voice. Từ going chúng ta sẽ đọc với giọng to và cao hơn. Where's Karen going? Or we can say, is the meeting in Simpson Hall? No, the meeting is at the student union this week. No, the meeting is at the student union this week. Chúng ta sẽ nhấn vào từ student union vì chúng ta muốn chỉnh sửa lại thông tin, không phải là ở Simpson Hall mà ở student union. Hãy chú ý đến những từ khóa, những từ danh từ, động từ, tính từ và trạng từ ở trong một câu. Những từ này chúng ta sẽ cần phải nói với một giọng cao hơn và to hơn những từ khác. Try to practice those examples. Now listen to the conversation. Underline the words in the conversation that the speakers stress. Usually those will be keywords. The nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, the adverbs. Remember.
Page 26.
Are you going to the environmental club meeting?
Maybe. What is it about?
It's a presentation about energy around the world. A photographer is going to talk about different families and how they live.
Sounds interesting. What time is the meeting?
It starts at 7.
Is it in the science building?
No, it's at the student union this time.
Now let's practice with these conversations together. You see, with the word that I highlighted, try to read it louder and higher than other words. Đối với một số trường hợp những từ dài, những từ có hai âm tiết trở lên thì mặc dù chúng là keyword nhưng chúng ta cũng không thể nào mà nhấn vào tất cả các âm tiết của từ đó. Vì vậy chúng ta sẽ chỉ nhấn vào trọng âm của từ đó. Ví dụ như từ environmental, trọng âm của từ này là ở meant. Vậy khi từ này trở thành một keyword thì chúng ta sẽ nhấn vào meant thôi. For example, are you going to the environmental club meeting? Từ meeting, trọng âm cũng ở meet. Vậy chúng ta sẽ chỉ nhấn vào meet chứ chúng ta không nhấn vào cả hai meeting. Okay? Now, let's practice with these examples. I will be Kathleen. I will be Kathleen and you will be Dan. Okay? I'll be Kathleen and you will be Dan. Let's practice together. I'll go first. Are you going to the environmental club meeting? It's a presentation about energy around the world. A photographer is going to talk about different families and how they live. It started at 7. No, it's at the students' union this time. Okay? Notice how I stress on the highlighted words or syllable here. Now, let's switch the role. I'll be Dan, you'll be Catherine. So you start first. Ready? Go. Maybe, what's this about? Sound interesting. What time is the meeting? Is it in the science building? Okay, very good. Now, listen to the talk, try to catch the main ideas, and write the country names where their family lives in these blanks. Next, listen and complete the notes about each family. Listen carefully and try to catch those details.
A. Listening for main ideas. Page 27.
Well, it's just about 7 o'clock, so why don't we get started? So, hello, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Carl Jones, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about energy use around the world. Instead of talking in general terms, I decided to focus on 3 families from 3 different countries and discuss how each family uses energy in their daily lives. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. First, let's look at the Chuma family in a village in Botswana. Mr. Chuma is a tour guide, and the family also raises cows. In this slide, you can see Mrs. Chuma doing some of her housework outside the family's small house. She washes her clothes by hand, and then she hangs them in the sun to dry. She isn't using any fossil fuels to wash and dry, which means she isn't sending any greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. In the next slide, you can see 3 of the Chuma's children and their neighbors' children going to school. The children walk there, and in the rainy season, they have to use this boat to cross the river. Again, you can see they aren't using much energy, so they aren't producing much carbon. Overall, the Chuma's demand for fossil fuels is quite low. They use fossil fuels for a few important things, such as electric lights and a radio, so as a family, they have a fairly small impact on the environment. But global warming is having a significant impact on the people of Botswana, and the Chuma family is one example of this. Sometimes they don't have water, and there isn't enough grass for their farm animals because of the dry climate. Now, let's look at the next family, the Nelsons. The Nelsons live in Las Vegas, in the United States. Here, in this slide, you can see Brandy Nelson with her laundry. She's listening to the news on a big TV while she folds laundry in their living room. She washed and dried these clothes in a machine, and there are many other things in their house that use electricity. In the next slide, you can see the Nelson children coming home from school. They attend a private school. The Nelsons drive them to school because there isn't a bus. Brandy and her husband are entertainers, and they both drive to their jobs because it's faster than public transportation. Their jobs are far from their home, so they use about a gallon of gasoline every day. The Nelsons want to conserve energy and have done several things to help reduce the amount of energy they use. For example, this year they bought more efficient appliances. They also want to put in a solar energy system in their house, but it's very expensive. Their lifestyle puts a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, but they say it's difficult to change their habits. Finally, we have the Panchal family. This is Neetu Panchal, who lives in Jaipur, India. There are 11 people in her family, all living in one house. They have a washing machine, but she hangs her clothes on the top of her house to dry. The Panchals are saving money to build another room in their house for Neetu's cousin and his wife. Neetu's sister, Lalita, goes to work by bus. Here she is in this next slide here. Lalita works in a hotel far from their home. It takes her 40 minutes to get there. She hopes that the family will soon buy a car so she can spend less time getting to work and more time at home with her family. India has a very big middle class, more than 300 million people. Changes in the lifestyles of India's middle class will have a big impact on the world's greenhouse gases. For instance, by 2050, there will be about 600 million cars in India, more than any other country in the world. And as the demand for cars increases, so will the demand for oil and gas.
Moving on to the speaking part, we are going to talk about some everyday English and some presentation skills with presenting a chart. Now, a lot of time when you speak, the people don't really understand you. At those times, it is the best to give examples. Khi nói để cho ý của chúng ta được nói rõ ràng hơn thì chúng ta nên đưa thêm ví dụ. Trong trường hợp này, ví dụ sẽ giúp cho người nghe dễ tưởng tượng hơn vì nó là những cái trường hợp cụ thể. I have some examples for you as well. Now, we have, if I talk about fossil fuels, I can say, well, we should avoid using fossil fuels, for example, petrol, gas, and coal. Those are some of the examples. Take another example. Many countries are trying to conserve energy. For example, people in Japan are buying smaller cars. Some of the phrases that you can use to start your example, like for instance, for example, or such as. Use the phrases. Try to include your example in what you're trying to say. Let's do some practice. Underline the expressions used for giving example in each sentence. Then circle the example. Let's practice with a conversation. First, I'll read both rows. Then we're going to practice together. Okay? Now, let's start. So what do you think we can do to save the energy? Well, I think we can change our everyday habits. For example, we can walk to work instead of using scooters. What do you think? Yeah, I agree with you. I think we can also pay attention to the energy stars when we buy appliances. You know, I always buy things with the 5 energy stars. Me too. What about the government? What should they do? I think they should pay more attention at developing the renewable sources of energy, like solar power. As far as I know, they are doing some of that. For instance, in Tây Ninh, there are 2 solar farms. Hope that there will be more in the future. Okay, now let's practice together. I'll start first. So, what do you think we can do to save energy? Yeah, I agree with you. I think we can also pay attention to the energy stars when we buy appliances, such as TVs or fridges. I always buy things with 5 energy stars. I think they should pay more attention at developing renewable sources of energy like solar power. Okay, very good. Moving on to the next part, we are going to talk about presentation skills. In this part, I want you to focus on the presentation of chart. Trong khi chúng ta thuyết trình, đặc biệt là khi chúng ta cần phải thuyết trình ở chỗ làm, nhiều khi chúng ta cần phải miêu tả một biểu đồ, một biểu bảng để có thể nói lên cái tình trạng hoặc là cái kết quả nghiên cứu thử nghiệm của chúng ta. Vậy ở trong phần này chúng ta sẽ tìm hiểu cách để miêu tả một biểu đồ khi thuyết trình. Ở đây chúng ta có một ví dụ về một biểu đồ tròn. Chúng ta cần phải hiểu rõ cái mà mình đang muốn miêu tả là gì. So, let's try to look at this chart and answer these questions to understand the chart a bit better. This is a chart shows what people in Australia use energy for home. So try to answer those questions. So you can see that in order to present a pie chart, you should answer the following questions. Để có thể miêu tả một biểu đồ biểu bảng thì đây là lời gợi ý của cô về cách mà chúng ta có thể tiến hành. Answer these questions. First, what does the pie chart show? You can say the pie chart shows how Australian people use energy at their home. What is the most significant? Cái nào là yếu tố lớn nhất? We can see that heating and cooling, in this case, heating and cooling accounted for the biggest part of the chart, followed by the water heating. Then, what is the least? Cái phần nào là ít nhất? For example, the cooking and lighting, as well as refrigerators and freezer, accounted for the smallest portion in the chart. And then you will end with what you want to say. What do you want to say when you describing all of this? So you may say, it is interesting to see that we usually think that cooking or lighting takes up a lot of energy, but indeed it is our habit of trying to heat the water that accounted for the most part of the energy. So, in order to cut down our energy use, we need to learn how to reduce our use in heating and water heating. So, now you try it. Try to search on the internet a pie chart, or try to find a pie chart in your own work, then practice presenting the chart. In this lesson, we have learned some vocabulary about energy. We have learned some keywords in speech that we need to stress on by reading it louder and higher. We have listened to a PowerPoint presentation about how people use energy in different places. And finally, we have learned how to present a pie chart. I hope that this lesson is useful for you, and I'll see you next lesson.